Hello everyone, and welcome back to Inside ArtScroll, where the books you read and the people who write them come to life. Today we are joined by Rabbi Moshe Bamberger, the author of many popular ArtScroll titles, the Great Jewish Series, and Rabbi Bamberger is also the Mashgiach Ruchani at Beis Medrash LeTalmud, Landers College for Men in Queens. Thank you, Rabbi Bamberger, for being here.
Thank you, Rabbi Bamberger.
We're here to celebrate and talk about your brand new book, which is the Great Jewish Journeys book. And I'd like to talk about that. But talk about the Great Jewish Series in general. How did you come up with that idea? And how has it changed as it's evolved?
Yeah, so actually in 2008, I was giving a VAD, which is a Musar class in Lander College for Men. And every year I give a different topic, and one year I just chose to speak about the letters of Gedolei Yisrael. And every week I would photocopy a different letter from a Rishon, from an Achron, and the guys were getting extremely into it. They really loved it, and it became like the most popular shir. And at the end of the year, one boy came over to me, a sweet boy, and he said, "Rebbe, I think you should publish this. This is great. This is really inspirational and touching and moving and powerful and historic." And then I had that light bulb moment, and I started typing out, translating the letters, introducing them, gathering pictures, enough to produce a sample of what it would look like. And I sent it to Rabbi Zlotowitz, Zichron Livracha, who I had a relationship with because I published two other books with ArtScroll at the time, Hallel and Sheva Brachas.
Which we have here.
We have them there. And I made a meeting with him. I came into his office, and he said that he loved the idea. And in fact, he even thought of the idea himself at an earlier period in his life. And he thought that this would be a great concept. But he never had somebody that would actually put it together and do it, and he was extremely excited about it. And if you know Rabbi Zlotowitz, if you knew him, he was always a perfectionist, and he was a visionary, and he didn't want to do it halfway. He wanted to do it the whole way. And we were planning on doing it very lavishly as a coffee table book, full color.
Was that his idea to do it as a coffee table type book?
I think it was sort of, we both agreed that that was the way it should be done. If it would have just been a regular book without any photographs, without any original letters, it would not be the same book, it would not be as powerful.
And you weren't concerned that because the price point would be higher, that maybe you're kind of...
Rabbi Zlotowitz, I'm sure, was concerned about that, but I wasn't concerned. I was the visionary without the price tag, and he was the visionary with the price tag, but he basically was very much on board about it, and he was very excited to do it. And so we started the process, and we had at the time some really professional in-house artists that worked on it, and they were wonderful. Rabbi Zlotowitz used to call the ArtScroll team the genius cluster. And if you read his biography, which I'm sure you have many times, it really captures what goes on here at ArtScroll. You have really the greatest professionals, each in their own field, coming together in a small area and producing results that are unfathomable.
So you finished the book on letters, which contains the actual letter and then a description of it and interesting insights and background. What was your next volume, and how did you decide on what you should address next?
I'm sorry, I got a letter from a Rebbe of mine who he wrote me a beautiful letter, and he complimented the book. He's Rosh Yeshiva in Long Beach, actually, and he told me that I can only imagine the next ones in the series. And at that moment, I thought about, maybe there would be a future here. Maybe we shouldn't just stop at letters. And the next thing that I thought of was speeches, and the great drushes and speeches of hespedim and of good times and tragic times, siyumim and major addresses at Knessia Gedolas, at great conventions. And I started gathering that, and we did a year's worth of VADs on that in Lander College. And again, it was very popular. And again, I approached Rabbi Zlotowitz, and he was very much for it, Baruch Hashem. And then it just evolved, as you put it. We went on from there to put a small book, which you have there also, called Great Jewish Wisdom, just quotes from Gedolei Yisrael, superimposed on beautiful photographs and a little biography about that particular gadol on the other side of the spread. That became a super bestseller because it was at more of an affordable price point, and you were able to give it out at dinners and at chasnas and graduations. And I think I'd say I probably get the most positive feedback from that particular volume.
Really?
Because people become more from it. People make starim in it. Girls in seminaries in Israel learn this at night. It's just a very powerful medium. You don't have to have a very long attention span, so it's perfect for our generation, and you get a really powerful dose of inspiration and wisdom right away in a second. From there we went on to Great Jewish Treasures, which happens to be my personal favorite. It's artifacts of Gedolei Yisrael. I went and gathered from the whole world, from Rishonim and Achronim, whatever we could put together. Beautiful, priceless, historic artifacts. Each one that sort of gives you a new angle about the gadol. Each piece is custom tailored to that particular gadol, so it really brings, it's like a show and tell of the gadol himself or herself. A fascinating exploration of Gedolim.
And how do you even go about collecting those artifacts? Did you call museums and curators or?
Everything. There are private collections that are astounding. There are public collections. There are libraries. There are the more you dig, the more you find. And you network and you do a lot of detective work. You find that you heard somewhere that the Baal Shem Tov Sefer Torah is here, and that the Vilna Gaon's that is here, and we just started the process until we found them.
So it's a lot of investigating.
A ton of investigating.
A lot of searching, calling people. Yeah. Were you always into history and fact finding? Was that in your blood?
So I have to acknowledge my father, Zechron Levracha, who he was nifter around 8 years ago, and he loved history, and he was very proud, in particular, of our yichus. We come from the Würzburger Rav, Rabbi Rabbi Bamberger, who was the Gadol Hadar in Germany, Paisik Hadar, and he put out many great svarim. And my father was just in love with him. I mean, he was nifter, in 1878, but my father basically lived his life around his legacy, around the Würzburger's legacy, and he collected every manuscript, every sitter, every chayfetz, everything that he could get his hands on. And he himself actually produced 2 volumes of his gathered manuscripts, his gathered kisvei yad, and he got me into it. We went to Würzburg together in Germany to visit kivrei tzaddikim, which is probably where the idea of the current sefer that we just produced today, Great Jewish Journeys, came from. But a lot of my influence in terms of history, in terms of Judaica, in terms of the love of Svarim, the love of Gedolim, I would directly trace to my father. And I'm hoping that in Shemayim he's looking down and shepping a lot of nachas right now.
I'm sure he is. Now, I do want to talk about Great Jewish Journeys, the newest book, but let's talk for a moment about your journey, where you grew up, who influenced you, and how you got to where you are today.
So I grew up in Long Beach, the city of the famous Ir HaTorah to a certain degree, because it does have a world-famous yeshiva there, where I attended high school and 1-year base medrash. And Long Beach was a very, very important city in a certain sense. There, besides for the yeshivas that they have and the wonderful shuls and rabbanim, there were a lot of lay leaders that, as a child, I didn't even realize who they were, but it turns out that they were of tremendous importance to Klal Yisrael in different ways. So there was a lot of nourishment that I got as a child from that village of Long Beach, a small city, but a very influential one. After I finished learning in Long Beach, I went on to a yeshiva in Yerushalayim called Kol Torah, which was under the leadership of Reb Shlomo Zalman Auerbach.
Were you in Reb Shlomo Zalman's shir?
I was able to be in his shir. It was a life-altering experience. I always tell my Talmidim that I didn't learn too much that Zman in Reb Shlomo Zalman's shir, because what would happen was that he would come into shir and he would take his glasses off, and he literally looked like a Malach Hashem Tzavakis. It was, and I wasn't able to understand. I chapped some of shir, but not all of it. But what I took away was how a mortal could become angelic, and to be able to be in his shir was such a zchus that, you know, I can never ever repay the Rabbeinu Shalom for guiding me in that direction, and just his royalty and his sweetness and his brilliance all combined in one human being just was off the charts.
Did you have any personal interactions with him?
I did have some personal connection with him, and I had some shimush by him as well. You know, I had a certain job that I was able to get closer to him through, and I was just enamored by him. I was just in awe of him.
And then when you were done at Kol Torah, did you come right back to the United States?
I did. I came back to the United States. I went to Ar Chaim in where I met and I learned under Rabbi Lander and Rabbi
in
Krauss,
Queens. That's in Queens.
And from there I went to Chaim Berlin, and I stayed there for about 12 years. I became very close with Rabbi Aaron Schechter, the Rosh Yeshiva, should live and be well, and I'm still close to him to this day. And so I spent a long time in yeshivas, and I loved every day, every minute of them.
And at that point, what did you anticipate doing? Did you think you're going to go into chinuch? Was that the route that you had planned for yourself?
No, not really. My problem wasn't that I didn't know what I wanted to do. My problem was that I wanted to do everything. I had varied interests, and I was, I wanted to do everything. But unfortunately, in life, you gotta try to focus. And the Rabbeinu Shalom just basically, I went in different paths, but we were living in Brooklyn, right next door to Kamenetz. And after we had my Bachar Shlomo Zalman, so I had a very big taiva to get into chinuch, and I called the Manal, who I had somewhat of a kesher with, and he just happened to have a job that was opening up. It was pure siyad d'shmai when I told Rabbi Aaron Schechter that I became a 12th grade Rebbe in Brooklyn without any chinuch, experience, and without really any connections. I didn't have to marry somebody to get that position. I didn't have to know anybody. I just basically, the Rabbi Aaron was like, he couldn't believe it. It was like nisbal, and that was the first, year of chinuch that I had, which Reb Chaim Siegel used to say that you should actually pay to get your first chinuch job. That's how chashuv it is to enter the field of chinuch. It was a wonderful year, and I loved the Talmidim there and the other Rabbeim there who were each incredible in the Yeshiva of Kamenetz, and Rabbi Siegel, the famous
Manal of Chaim Berlin.
No, the Rabbi Siegel.
Oh, you're talking about Rabbi Siegel from Kamenetz.
From Kamenetz. He was a tremendous person. I was very close with him. Rabbi Zellinger and Rabbi Leiner and the whole chevra there was unbelievable. And then in the middle of the year, Rabbi Lander, who I had learned under in Ar Chaim, he heard that I was doing a good job in Kamenetz, and there was just this brand new yeshiva that opened up in Queens called Lander College for Men. It was 2 years old, and it was still getting off the ground, and they needed a mashgiach. And so I went and I spoke to Dr. Lander and Rabbi Lander together, and I decided to move on. And
so what is the role of a mashgiach on a practical level now in such a institution?
So on a practical level, first of all, when I first came there were about 30 Talmidim. Today we have about 250 Talmidim. It grew, and the quality of the boys and the ruach in the yeshivas is amazing. My role personally is to, of course, I give vadin, I give shmuzin, and I'm the Rav there on Shabbos in the Beis Medrash and on Yantif. But my main role there is one of giving direction and chizuk to the Talmidim. It's a very pivotal time in their life. It's a time that they have to make very, very important decisions about.
What age group of boys are you dealing
So
with
it's
primarily?
Primarily 19 to 23.
So shidduchim,
Shidduchim,
career decisions,
career,
yeshiva decisions.
Yeshiva decisions. That's the epicenter of a person's life. The decisions that people make at that age are the decisions that pretty much they live with until Seif Yamav. Think about it. I mean, you know,
Sure.
who you're going to marry, and how you're going to raise your children, and what type of hashkafa you're going to have, and the whole dating process is very, very important. And if you're getting advice on dating from people that are not people that should be giving advice, it could alter the entire trajectory of a person's life. So we give vads on dating, and then we give vads on shalom bayis to the kailal, and we give vads to, we try to really hammer home all of these special points that the Talmidim need, and it really, Baruch Hashem, they appreciate it, and it works.
Now, besides for your role as mashgiach, and you're also writing books, I know you're involved in other endeavors of Harbatzas HaTorah and spreading messages of chizuk. Just take a moment to speak about that, because I know you're touching a lot of people out of just the sphere of Lander College.
Thank you. So I started within this year, and you were an important part of it. I started something called Great Jewish Broadcast, which is obviously a play on the title of my series, the Great Jewish Series. So what a broadcast is for those people that have WhatsApp, and that's not a recommended thing necessarily, but many of us unfortunately have it. And it's a medium that could be used l'ra, but it could also be used l'taiv if it's used properly, like everything else in life. And what I did was I used my love of Gedalim and history and my creativity, if I might say so, to spread the Dvar Hashem through messages about a gadol. Every single week I send out to close to 5,000 people, and growing, Baruch Hashem, a message, like it's almost like a choreographed short message. It's not my face. You don't see my face in it, Baruch Hashem, for the viewers, but you just see videos and different graphics that are very powerful with the music in the background, and it really has hit home to many thousands of people every week. And then we have on our status, which is also a component of WhatsApp, that you're able to put up short inspirational messages in a very creative way. I have a podcast, Great Jewish Podcast, which I'm able to feed into through the status, and every Friday my shir goes up, my shmuz that I give on the parsha in Lander goes up immediately on that. So we're using, Baruch Hashem, technology to further the Dvar Hashem.
You've definitely used creativity and kind of thinking out of the box, even in the written word. Instead of just printing a book, you've thought of ways to enhance it with beautiful pictures and, like you said before, artifacts. Now, in your latest book, Great Jewish Journeys, which I'm enjoying myself very much, I'm going through it. I actually just looked at the piece on Rav Gifter with his desk, which I found fascinating. And I would love to ask you, first give our viewers an overview of what this book is about. And then if you could share one or two highlights of things that you found most intriguing as you compiled the content of this book.
So the next step after Treasures, I happen to have written another book called Great Jewish Classics. I just want to give that, I don't want it to feel bad.
Can I interrupt for a moment?
Yeah,
I want to let our viewers know that the book is right here, and you only just saw the book about 20 minutes ago when you came here. You had never even seen the new volume, so it really is brand new. We had a couple of copies here in the office. So, you could make your shechiyanu now. I'm sure it's a feeling of tremendous fulfillment to see the book after you put in so much effort and time and toil. But I wanted to mention that. I'm sure that's a tremendous feeling of satisfaction. It's so nice to be able to
sit near it. It's almost like, when you go into a hospital and you see your baby for the first time. And, I saw it behind glass until now, but now I'm able to actually hold it. And like you said, make a shechiyanu, and the Paiskim do say that when you put out a new sefer, you should say a shechiyanu without Shem Malchus. And that's, I feel, shechiyanu v'kimanu v'genu lazman hazeh. It's a tremendous chus. Not everybody gets a chus like this, to be able to not just have a concept, but actually to bring a concept to life. and to be grateful to the Rabbi Shalom for giving me that ability, and how could I repay him? It's impossible. After the great Jewish classics on the Sarim, so somebody came to me and said, a big scholar, and he told me that, Rabbi Moshe, I loved Great Jewish Treasures, which is the one about the artifacts, but you left out so many treasures. I said, really? I like to think that I sort of captured all of them. So he said, no. There's so many treasures throughout the world that you missed. There is the shuls and the yeshivas that are still standing throughout Europe that the Nazis didn't get to. And then we have the Kaisel HaMarav, you have Kever Rachel, you have Maras Machpelah, and then you have all of the kivrei tzaddikim. Think about it. You have a place where the Vilna Gaon is buried, and tzaddikim that were there when he was reinterred from one bestselling to another attested to the fact that his face and his cheeks were rosy red 100 years after he was nifter. There are tzaddikim that are still b'misasam kriyim chayim. They're literally here, and you missed that whole, you missed all those artifacts. You missed all of there's so much more that you missed. And I had another light bulb moment, and I said to myself, okay, fine, that's another book. And I, of course, contacted Rabbi Gedalia, who should live and be well. He's wonderful. He's at the helm of ArtScroll. I happen to have known Rabbi Gedalia way back. We went to Camp Monk together, and then we were in Long Beach Yeshiva. We overlapped together. He's a few years older than me, but he was always tremendous. And he signed off on it, and I started collecting a lot of information about the Mekaymis HaKadoshim, the kivrei tzaddikim, the Torah landmarks around the world, in Eretz Yisrael, in the Middle East, in Europe, in America, and it's been an amazing journey. It's been an amazing journey.
Any specific part of this book that was really intriguing to you, or that you didn't know before you started digging?
I don't know anything. I'm a big Amaritz. I don't claim to be a big scholar or a big historian. All I am is somebody that has a curiosity. And when you have a curiosity about things, then you begin to explore, and you find out new things every day that you didn't know the day before. And that's what life is all about: waking up and saying Maida'ani, and saying I want to try to really absorb something new today. And so there's so much that we could go through. I mean, it's really an endless journey. But suffice it to say that there's so many stories that I tried to bring out, not about their svarim that we did, not about their treasures, not about their letters, but specifically end of life, yisaidus, foundations that we could take from each gadol. So either something that sort of a huaya aimer vard, if you will, like something that really defined them and that is their legacy, or something that happened at the end of their life that was very powerful, with sidebars of actually divrei Torah that they said concerning death. Like, for example, Moshe Feinstein writes in one of his sarim that the word matseva, which is the tombstone, the gravestone, comes from the word nitzav, that standing. Because when you die, a person becomes stationary. A person can't really move in a certain sense, in a physical sense, but also all the mitzvahs sort of stop, and the Torah stops. Obviously, through your children, you're able to, and through your talmidim, and through all the good that you brought to the world, you're able to continue on a certain level. But a mace is nitzav. He's standing. He's an aimed. And so it's a musar shmuz, says Rabbi Moshe, that when you go to a matseva, you're supposed to, says, you're supposed to really be inspired and be motivated that I'm a mahalach, I'm able to move, I'm able to steig, I'm able to grow, I'm able to expand and do great things with life. And when you walk away from matzeva, you shouldn't be depressed. You should be galvanized and empowered to take life by the horns and really just do what you were meant to do. Don't be afraid. Just try to figure out what it is that the Rabbi Shalom wants you to do, and then just do it.
And there's no question that a lot of the stories and anecdotes that you include will give people a whole different feeling and experience when they do visit kivrei tzaddikim and understand the greatness and the depth of the people who they're asking to beseech on their behalf to the Rabbi Shalom. There's no question about it. I know you included maps as well. I saw very interesting, and it must have been a yeoman's job just compiling that, putting it together, guiding people that if they want to find certain kvarim, that they'll be able to do that with the aid of the book. But I think it's important to note that while it is a journey into yesteryear and into Kvarim, it's not a depressing book. It's a very uplifting, inspiring book that will inspire readers, hopefully, to try to emulate the people who are described.
Yeah, it's interesting. In all of the other books, I don't think you're going to find more than maybe 2-3 pictures out of thousands of pictures probably in these 4 of the books. I never put matzevis in the books because I wanted it to be purely alive. I wanted pictures of life. I wanted to get, and I colorize the pictures. I try to enhance every picture to make sure that the reader really feels like they're getting pulled into history. And this book was an exception because it is about kivrei tzaddikim. I'd say 80% of it is kivrei tzaddikim, 20% of it is the landmarks that still exist in the world. But I try to make the kivrei tzaddikim not depressing. I try to make it user-friendly, if you can do that. And that's what the tzaddikim themselves would want. They want you to come to their kever and daven, and not chas v'shalom to them, but to the Rabbeinu Shalom, that their schus should stand in good stead for us. I must point out that Reb Nosson Sherman Shlito, who is, he's been called the Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch of our times. And you get this chus to see him every day and to work with him. It's an unbelievable chus, and I've known him for many years since Hallel. He edited my Hallel, and he's always been so wonderful. He wrote the overview of this book, which is also a tremendous chus, and he specifically wrote about what kivrei tzaddikim are and how you're supposed to approach a kever and what the different fine details and the hashkafa behind a kivrei tzaddikim, what it's supposed to do, and how it's not only in order, like you said, to daven and to beseech that the tzaddikim's chus should rise up to the kisei hakavod for us, but it's also to inspire us to do tshuva, v'chayitin alibay. You see that life is finite, that we're all mortals, and there will be a day that this will all come to an end, and it's supposed to make us do tshuva, which is it's not a down theme, it's an up positive thing. And also he said a very interesting aside that, like by Kalev, it says that Ruach Acheres Hayabay, when he visited the Maras Machpelah, he got a Ruach Acheres. He tapped into the spiritual schusim of the Avis. When he walked away from the Maras Machpelah and he davened that he shouldn't be trapped in the plot of the Meraglim, of the spies, he had a Ruach Acheres. He took with himself the tzaddikim, all the schusim of the Avis, and he didn't leave it at the kever, he took it with him. And that became part of him. So when we go to Eretz Yisrael and daven by the kivrei tzaddikim, or to Europe, or even to America, which is something that I point out in the book, you don't have to, you don't need to go. I live in Queens, like you said before. 10 minutes away from my house, you have tremendous gedalim, Rav Yaakov Yosef, the first chief rabbi of New York and the last chief rabbi of New York. You have Rapam, you have the Chavetz Chaim's second Rebbitzin. You have people, if they wouldn't live in Queens, if they would be buried in Belarus, people would be running there. Exactly. But like we could go get into our car if we live in America, and visit them, and we could get that Ruach Acheres ourselves. We're able to take a piece of the inspiration of that gadol with us. So the point of the book is that when you go to the kever, or when you study about the kever, to each gadol has their own unique niggin that they brought to the world, if you will. They all were different. And the gedalim, we sort of sometimes just, say, okay, they were all Talmidei Chacham and that's it. Every gadol brought to the world something special and unique, and the takeaway from every kever, from every legacy, is uniquely different. And that's what you're going to find in this book. Every single gadol and their unique journey, their unique takeaway lesson, that I think if we would daven by their kever and we would, let's say, take our own guided tour of the kivrei tzaddikim with this book, we would be able to read it by each individual kever. And like you said, we have brand new maps that I designed that will point out exactly how to get to every one of the difficult to find tzaddikim's kevers. And you'll be able to be your own tour guide, right, and take away an important machshava, an important musar from each gadol.
Now, before we end, I have to ask you, and I'm sure you've gotten many, many suggestions over the years. Once you started with the great Jewish themes, So tell me some of the suggestions. What do you have on your agenda? And then I want to share my own if I can, or should I do that first?
Yeah, do that first.
How about great Jewish melodies? And I'm not talking about necessarily contemporary songs. I love music. Oidi Shama, that we sing by almost every chasana. I would love to know the history. I've asked around. I've met musicians. When I would talk to Rabbi Tzien Schenker, who I was able to know, I would ask them, where did that song come from? I don't know. The song that Kayanim sing by Duchning. It's an age-old niggin that goes back generations, but I wonder really what's the origin and things like that. Now, putting melodies into a book is a little difficult. Maybe you could accompany it with a CD. I'm just giving a suggestion. But that's my contribution to the Great Jewish series. But what ideas have you contemplated, and what's next for the Great Jewish series?
Great Jewish retirement. I get this question every day. It's so funny. Like just today I was speaking to a Talmud in the Beis Medrash, and he asked me like, okay, Rabbi, what's next? And I was like, can't you just like buy this book and enjoy that? What do you have to worry about?
That's the way we are, right?
We are. And in fact, on my broadcast, I actually put that question out to the thousands of people that were watching. I said, please, send me your suggestions of what the next Great Jewish book should be. And I got some really good suggestions. Personally, I have a lot of plans for the series. I could still go if Rabbi Gedalia, would agree to it. The next in the series is probably going to be something called Great Jewish Inspiration, which is a very motivational book that I think our Dar needs in Befrat, specifically now during COVID when we're all at wit's end and worried and we need a really healthy dose of energy and power and chizuk. So this book would hopefully accomplish some of that. It would be a small book, but a very, very important book in the series to bring to light a lot of the one-line messages of chizuk of Gedolei Yisrael, and then a little commentary on the other side of the spread of my own. I actually wrote a book called Great Jewish Poetry, which is sort of on the, touching upon your music idea. Gedolei Yisrael, Rishonim and Achreinim, which is the period that I really love the best, they wrote poetry. Pizmainim, Zmiris, but even regular poetry that are dripping with inspiration, with Yerushalayim. And I translated many of them in rhyme, and we basically, maybe someday that would be a book that would be worthy of entering this series. But the Steipler wrote poetry, the Chazon Ish wrote poetry, or Meir Shapiro wrote poetry. There's so much out there. There's really somebody suggested on the broadcast that I write a Great Jewish Women, to put a series just only about women. Today somebody suggested to me a Great Jewish Balabatim. Great Jewish laymen, people, lay leaders, or regular, ordinary people that really changed the face of Klal Yisrael, which is very inspirational. I always say that my favorite biographies are not necessarily biographies of Gedalim, they're biographies of regular people, because you can relate to them, and they called him Mike, I think might be my best, my most, there's a book called Joseph, about Joseph Dweck. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Tzaddik Inside ArtScroll from the Syrian community, regular balabas, who was such a sweet soul that gave and did so much. And, that might be something to consider, but we just have to daven for Siyat Dishmaya, that the Rabbi Shalom, if the Rabbi Shalom wants more to come out, he will give us the kayach to do so.
They all sound like great ideas, so you definitely have me intrigued. And I guess we'll wait with bated breath for that. But for now, Mazel Tov on the new volume. We're very excited about it. I'm sure many people will buy it and enjoy it and study it and review it. And we want to wish you continued Hatzlacha in your Habatzas HaTorah and in sharing the greatness of our Jewish heritage and the different components of Jewish life that maybe sometimes we overlook, that you're bringing out in such beautiful fashion. Continued Hatzlacha, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Rabbi Hissager. I really appreciate your time, and I love your show is tremendous. One after another. I don't know how you are able to just do it with such skill and such love and talent, and you're clearly super qualified for exactly the role that the Rebbeinu Shalom put you in.
Appreciate it. Thank you again.
Thank you.